Science Shaping Beauty, the official podcast of the New York Society of Cosmetic Chemists, where we share everything you need in beauty and personal care product development, from formula to finish. I'm your host and NYSCC chair, Anushka Nadkarni. Today, we are joined by Peter Tsolis, Vice President of Skincare R&D at Estée Lauder Companies. With decades of experience in formulation and product innovation, Peter has helped bring some truly cutting-edge, science-backed skincare technologies to life. He's also actively involved with International Federation of Societies of Cosmetic Chemists, contributing to the global advancement of cosmetic science. We're also joined by Diane Dabkowski, co-founder of A10 Process Solutions and a seasoned leader in the cosmetic R&D industry. She spent years driving innovation across hair care, body care, and color cosmetics in companies like Avon and Unilever, and also serves on the executive board of the New York Society of Cosmetic Chemists, supporting the broader industry. Thank you both for joining us today.
Great.
Thank you
so much.
Anushka.
So let's get started. Could you both professionally elaborate on your professional role in the industry?
So I could start that. So currently, I lead some of the most incredible scientists in the Estée Lauder Companies, and I'm humbled and have the privilege to work on these iconic brands such as La Mer, Clinique, Estée Lauder, MAC, across so many incredible regions. I'm also a board member of the IFSCC, and again, there get to interact with so many leaders across the globe on how we foster education and communication throughout our industry. And lastly, I'll say it all comes together, but I've been an adjunct professor also at New York University in the Tandem School of Engineering, teaching a class for the last couple of years, and that also again brings to life how we teach our younger scientists, and through this education and community that we're building with the SEC is really impactful.
That's amazing. And Diane?
Okay. Well, I've worked in corporate R&D for over 30 years, starting with a North American-based company that was acquired by Unilever a few short years after I started. Spent quite a bit of time with Unilever, wonderful experience, quite a bit of diversity and challenges and opportunities there. And then I moved on to Avon. And from that point, once I finished up with Avon, I was able to embark on a new chapter. It's often called a portfolio career, which is just a bunch of gigs. No 2 days are the same. Of course, I was also looking for opportunities to give back. Of course, one of them you highlighted as NYSCC. It's just such rewarding work. As another way of giving back, I am an adjunct supporting the Rutgers Masters of Business Science program. And it's just so wonderful to share not only my technical expertise, but my life experiences, and to learn from the students as well. And then finally, I do love my career now in consulting, from ingredient suppliers to contract manufacturers to brands.
That's amazing. So I hear a lot of multinational experience from you guys, right? So that dives into my next question. What pulled you into formulation, and did you always envision yourself formulating for the global industry? Maybe you could go first.
My start was right out of school, and I applied for a quality assurance chemist position. With this North American-based company. And that provided me with a wonderful foundation of skills. I was exposed to the entire product portfolio across brands, working in the QA lab. I was also gaining familiarity with the ingredients, understanding structure, properties, function, consumer benefits. And also early insights into manufacturing and supply chain. How we all have to collaborate, and this success needs to be from start to finish. Then we were all co-located with R&D at the time. So I started understanding, like, wow, I'd love to create some formulas and take a look at the artistic side of as well as the science. So after a few years, I started in formulation, and it was primarily hair care at the time. Rinse off leave-ons, wonderful experiences. And how it broadened was being acquired by Unilever. Yes, there were some challenges, but those challenges turned into wonderful opportunities for me.
Yeah, really great points. I think for me it was more, I was able to intern at some pharmaceutical companies through NYU undergraduate. And they were great, really high science and great. And then my third year, I had done an internship at Estée Lauder Companies, and I saw this, entrepreneurial indie aspect that so attracted me to this side of the industry. And I, did a full circle, took a full-time position, a little bit after, and I just fell in love with developing for the consumer. And, for a chemistry student, for a chemistry, a scientist, it's how do you use that knowledge to use it with your hands, have creativity. There's more art to it, as well. And I just, seeing a product on the shelf, seeing consumer pick it up and smile and enjoy it, I think I was hooked. And then, from there, everybody thinks their first job is going to be this quick, type of transition. But, again, I was lucky enough to be in a company that has innovated entrepreneurial style and indie style, as well as acquired brands, and get to work in so many spaces throughout their career.
That's amazing. I think that portfolio really speaks for itself. I think you don't know what you're starting off with, especially within the cosmetic science industry, right? Because we all started with like a chemistry major or a pharmaceutical major, but here we are creating something that people use every day, which is so rewarding. I love that.
I had no idea this world existed.
That's true.
To be able
That
to
makes
delight
it
the
to us.
consumer.
But I'm glad that's changing with academic, knowledge, with the SCC and NYSCC. A lot of more organizations, I think, that whole diaspora of the cosmetic industry and how it works, what it is, I think that education is really increasing around that. So that's great. My next question is, you both have worked across different markets, right? I would say, what is that one assumption that you made very early on in the career, which you had to unlearn over the years? Peter?
I guess I think, in the beginning, I think you're exposed to, again, a finite type of chemistries and ingredients and raw materials, even through suppliers. And I think, I love this evolution of this global community coming together. And you again see different chemistries and how different companies and regions approach it. Right. We always look at this final product, but the final product is made from so many thought processes before it. Right. And I think, my assumption early on was, again, there was such a finite library of materials. And I think, that explosion of that library, as well as, we'll touch on it, I'm sure, throughout the day, like AI, and again, like the proliferation of like modern chemistries. I think, you almost had to unlearn that, there might be infinite, polymer characteristics, emollient characteristics that you could really drive better and better. And that's what keeps me excited every week. It's not, something that's, standard, but it's always evolving. And again, like every month is going to be, something new.
That's interesting. What's your take?
I would say that I was surprised to see that there are a lot of similarities, commonalities, rather than differences across the markets. Again, I would see how we could converge to a common base, and then it would be flexible enough to be tailored for a particular market.
Okay, that's amazing. I think my one assumption was just because it looks good on paper, it does look good on the bench.
True.
Right. It took me a long time to get that frustration out that, it's not actually translated. R&D is all about trying and error and then constantly doing that. And then out of the 10 trials, you get one that's stable. And I think that's really makes the cut.
Dealing with disappointment.
Exactly. And
100%.
doing that over and over again, and then coming up with that eureka moment where this is going to work and this is going to be used by so many people in the market. Yeah. That's amazing.
Well said.
How different do you guys think is the mindset of a global formulator versus somebody who formulates for the regional market?
Okay, I can start. One thing that is becoming more critical these days is regulatory compliance. Again, we're not seeing harmonization. We're seeing more of a patchwork quilt. Even in the U.S., states are emerging with their own regulations. So that's been an emerging challenge that I had to deal with a lot in my closing years at Avon.
Yeah, and I think there's a balance, and again, if you look at different subcategories in the region, I think there's a very I will say I'm encouraged by today's scientists and formulators. That way, their skin knowledge and biological knowledge across the world is pretty high. Again, looking at the salt characteristics, the diets of different cultures, and I think taking all that into account to design the right product is incredible. But there are going to be, again, that regionalization approach when it comes to certain, and I don't want to say trends, but certain, products are going to be right for, skin tones, climates, environments. So I think, there's this balance that's happening, but I will say highly encouraged by this, more global knowledge of the consumer, and their skin and kind of their habits to kind of make that correct product.
Yeah. I think that's what we also do on a contract manufacturing level, where when something comes up to be like, the customer would say that we only want to sell in the US and Canada, but it's always better to have like a global compliance check for a regulatory basis.
Yes, you need to anticipate.
Exactly.
Yes.
Because I feel like, today you want to sell in the US and Canada and the product does really well, you would want to expand that. And then reformulating on the bench, that's again another
and not a
issue
value add.
Exactly.
Yeah. And it's such I was going to say, such a mobile world out there.
Exactly.
Very dynamic. Right. And I tend to look to Europe for those leading indicators.
Yeah.
100%.
They're always the ones who are the flag bearers of this, which is great. Okay. Next question is, do you think great formulators are made more of science or somebody who's relying on people and culture?
I think it has to start with science, but I think there's a blend. I will say great formulators are made from great teachers. And, I know we each probably had some mentors and some incredible leaders that have taught us to kind of understand that science. But I think you raise a great point. You have to have that predictable, artistic angle to it and use imagination, magic. And, because again, it's I think our task could always be to meet the brief, to meet the consumer. Right. But I think that the bigger task of success is to exceed expectations and bring the consumer to a journey that they're not even sure they want to go there yet. And I think, again, understanding that takes some risk. Yeah. And to the second point you made, it does take some artistic type of, understanding of the consumer and kind of leaping to what the current state is.
Yeah. Yeah, and just building on what you said earlier, that we do have better insight into the consumers. We're so connected. We have so many digital tools to profile them. And these days, the science is so critical to achieve that because of the emerging restrictions, the move towards sustainability, cost constraints. And I also agree with you, Peter, that the apprenticeship is critical.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yes. This isn't stuff we learned in a book.
No.
Even though there are cosmetic science master programs, there's still this ongoing apprenticeship.
There's so much learning outside. There's so much learning outside. You know how we go back to presentations given by the suppliers. And, I always... I do love a good clinical study, and I want to see how many people was studied on. So definitely that. But I also really look forward to perception studies. Because at the end of the day, the consumer needs to feel good about it. And I think that's the whole part about the magic, the art, and the people, knowing that person, knowing that you're formulating for a human at the end of the day. So it's definitely hand in hand. Love it.
Yeah.
So when you're formulating for a global launch, right, it's huge in itself because there's so much intricacies. I would say, what truly leads the process? Is it consumer insight, regulatory constraints, or supply chain realities? Dan?
Well, I'd have to go back to regulations because that's going to dictate. I have a brief. I have pretty good insight into the consumer needs, but I have to then determine what ingredients at what use levels I can use in my toolkit to start. I also have to consider supply chain needs. It may be very easy for me to get that ingredient off my shelf at the lab bench, but it may be very difficult and not cost effective to get that ingredient into a Brazil factory.
Absolutely.
So it's just, again, it requires a lot of cross collaboration with marketing, with supply chain, with our product integrity regulatory teams, all of these to make a good product
That's very
to
true.
delight the consumer.
Yeah, really good points. I think it goes many ways, but I think my mind always goes to kind of two things that converge, and I think there's such a laser focus on superior performance, and I think if we get that puzzle right, everything else falls into place. Maybe that's my optimistic, naively perspective on life, but I do think and I think there's a convergence of this need, a consumer need, a brief, like the right brief with that consumer need. But I also think us as scientists, like we should inspire something new through technology. And sometimes, I've seen it throughout my career, like some of the biggest successes were led by technology.
Right.
So where I don't think there was ever a script or a brief to say, please solve this, but it was more like having the right, brand partner and product development and marketing partner to imagine the technology that you're describing to them or feeling or showing, and I think truly making it something incredible. So I think I would like to think the rest of them would kind of fall into place, but how do you develop something superior for the consumer? And again, it could be concept, consumer, or technology that will drive that innovation.
Perfect. That really ties into, at the end of the day, how you make the consumer feel, to your point, right? That magic that precedes
Exactly.
over everything. Okay. How often do you have to compromise between performance and scalability?
I could start that way. To me, it almost goes right back to I think there should be no compromise on performance. And I think that's the challenge. I think if we write that has like the gospel on top, everything else should fall accordingly. So I think, there's always going to be, again, some constraint in the world. And I think, we have to innovate around that. But I think, driving that, high performance, I think, I would like to think that brands and companies will foster that superior product no matter what. So to me, I think it kind of starts there. And then I do think, the partnership, and it's a great point you're making, the partnership with engineering and seeing the end-to-end picture, I think is a big deal. And I think that's one thing, and I'm sure we're going to get into like how we learn throughout our careers, but the first years especially, I think you really learn the intricacies and relationships between packaging, material science, engineering, scale up, filling, nozzles. I'm sure we could all, tell about our 3 a.m. nightmares in the plant. But I will say like those learnings truly give you that end-to-end picture that we really need to develop for today's consumer.
Right. I think one thing we really encourage back in my company is that for every pilot, the scientist would go,
100%.
Yes.
Yeah.
and that's so essential. I think that should be key. That's almost inevitable that because
Not all companies do that.
correct, and I just feel like it should be encouraged because what happens at the bench not often is translated to that scale because making a 3.5 kg versus a 200-pound batch is hugely different. That mixing, that kind of temperature, ambient temperature, whatever that control, I think is very different. So I think getting that perspective completely to understand the whole product development cycle is very important. So that's great. Perfect. My next question is, do you guys believe, one size fits all global formula works, or it's more of a business ideal than a scientific reality?
It is a business ideal that companies are successful quite often. However, sometimes product forms just don't play in a given market. For example, you really can't sell a shower gel into the Brazil market. They're still very soap bar based. Then when it comes to other product forms, we have had success developing then chassis. But as I mentioned, you need to tailor them for the market. Also, fragrance, of course, plays a critical role. But you do have a core list of ingredients in order to have simplicity in the supply chain, efficiencies, leverage of scale.
Yeah. And I think, just add to, Diane's points, I think when you think about a global, let's say, launch, there's still always a lead market.
Yes.
Right.
And I think,
Yes.
that would kind of help that thought process of, again, how you design for it. And I go back to today's consumer is such a traveling consumer. And they're inevitably going to see these offerings, whether they're in the airport in Asia, in North America, in Europe, or wherever. So I do think that mindset has to be more uniform, but there's always that lead market. And again, I think today's consumers are also looking for inspirations across regions. So I think, designing globally, but I think there's always this regional relevance aspect. And then the other part is I do think that certain attributes and characteristics that you're building into this product, emulsion or something, some of them are going to really highlight something that one region will love, and the other ones are really going to gravitate towards the end feel or the after feel. So I think it's also interesting to see regionally what consumers pay attention to kind of design that way.
Oh, that's amazing. That actually leads to my next question about factors, right, that determine this. So how do you think factors like climate, hair type, skin biology, even water quality really shape the formulation?
I just thought that one. I think they really do, especially when it comes to, changing climate or I should say consumer behaviors. Going to the West Coast and seeing somebody in and out of air condition, and even how they put the product on and when they put the product on. I think there's nothing to me, and you mentioned it before. Seeing how consumers experience them and doing those walk-alongs and those consumer, even from a retail stores.
Right.
And my favorite is also, how do you talk to the, the retail environments, the people, the consultants in the stores. But I think, sustainability right now is table stakes. I think, every consumer expects it, and companies, I have to say, are being incredibly responsible to rise up to that level.
Yes. So again, building on what you said, and especially when we first started, we really had to do the ethnography, go shopping with the consumers to understand what their wants and needs are, their pain points. They didn't even realize that they had the pain points. So we would observe the consumers, how they might be struggling with a mascara, and how could we design the brush better. And you have to consider environment. When I was responsible for developing a base chassis of a shower gel, across the Avon markets, I had to screen with different hardness levels for water, just to make sure there would be a robust skeleton. And then, of course, going through several small panel screenings, we had the big test with our top market, sequential monatic, making sure there was no perceivable difference in the formula.
For the water, I've also noticed, if you really go that intricate, even West Coast versus East Coast, it's so different.
Exactly. I mapped out the water hardness, and the U.S. covered it all.
Yeah.
And then I would check with China and Poland and all of that, and we had all the water hardness, and we're partnered with Analytical to reproduce the different levels of water hardness.
That's pretty interesting. And I'll let you take this one. Between regulatory restrictions and ingredient storytelling, what do you think takes precedence when you're formulating for global level?
And I do have to say that we have some big drivers, some must-haves. So with the sustainability is critical, and that's evolving. We have the clean beauty retailer lists,
Mm-hmm.
which are very dynamic, as well as the regulations. So those are the starting points in order for me to convey the story with the formulation.
Yeah, and I think, as today's consumers are again getting more knowledgeable from, from an environmental aspect, I think again those constraints could almost be seen as like enablers. We are, how do you champion the right partnership with suppliers? How do you partner the right, and foster that business so the industry could drive itself to a higher level and state? Um, I will think that, again, performance is paramount and key. But again, all those other, characteristics are going to be, super essential to the consumer. And at the end of the day, you're driving to an entire value package. And it goes back to, different consumers are going to see the value differently and how they spend on it. But, I will say that, it's going to be consumer acquisition, compliance, and, somebody really reusing the product multiple times is going to come from this, relationship they're going to form with the product based on performance.
Yeah. And I believe that's exactly where innovation lies,
Yeah.
right? Carrying everything together, making sure that every need is met.
Right.
Regulatory, innovation, performance, substantiation,
Yeah.
everything is met. I think you can make a great product, but if it's not stable, I'm sorry, it's not going to make it work, right? You can make a great product, but if it's not regulatory compliant, it's not going to work. I think that's the whole challenge about the innovation part where, that's where you're innovative because you made sure that every box is checked.
Right.
It's leading to those innovation opportunities.
Exactly. So that's great.
Yeah.
Peter, I'll let you take this one first. What do you think are the biggest shifts that you've seen right now in the global industry?
I think today's consumers are very keen on that value kind of equation in their head, and I think using a product once and kind of experiencing it, I think is one side of them, but for them to have, and I don't want to use the word loyalty, but for them to have this repeat experience, I think is the unlock that a lot of companies and brands are looking at. Today's consumers are, every month and year, they're getting far more knowledgeable. I also think that, we have to, when we talk end-to-end, technically, we have to think end-to-end, how do we communicate and experience? And now with social media, with everything from social media to friends to, watching videos of how people use products, I think right now they have so many open points of contact with the product that you have to ensure that product is represented to that level of value wherever. So to me, I see it as an exciting opportunity. But I would also say this is, the highest level, and it's only going to increase where, our consumers expect high science as well as like high performance, and proving it on paper or in a concept is one side that's going to get one usage, but the repeat's going to come from a visible result that they're going to see or feel, and I think that's the exciting part of our job.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Consumers have so much choice these days.
Right.
It's where do they put their vote? And sometimes it can be overwhelming. So that communication, to your point, Peter, it needs to be a clear, relatable message. Again, they have so much going on. They're looking toward simpler regimens and looking holistically too, trying to de-stress, looking at beauty inside out with nutraceuticals. This path to beauty has expanded, yet they still would like to have some simplicity too.
True. Very true.
Yeah, the multi-step skincare approach is not for everyone, I believe, right? Especially in this fast-moving environment for young professionals. In general, it's just difficult to keep up. And I think that's why multifunctionality is huge. Ingredient and product. I think that's what we want to pitch. Okay,
Agree.
love it. How would you differentiate between a true global trend versus something very regional specific? Dan, you can go first.
Okay. Again, just looking at where that trend is coming from. One that I'm, because consider to be regional for now is the beauty solutions for GLP-1 users. Again, 1 out of 8 Americans is using GLP-1. It's not as prevalent overseas because the diabetes, the overweight issues aren't as much of prominence there. Yet, there are side effects, and GLP-1 is not a journey, but it turns into a lifestyle, and differences are noted. The loss of volume, lines sagging, hair loss, nutritional deficiencies. So that's where we can come aid these people so that they can lead healthier lives. And yet, not sacrifice the way they look and feel. They'll feel good all around.
Yeah, and I see, there's a big convergence and unity when it comes to these big themes, and they travel, it seems. I will say right now, the emphasis on food, diet, overall wellness. Again, how do you kind of stay attuned to that? And I wouldn't say trend, but just that lifestyle change. And that's what I think, you see globally kind of what's happening. It's represented different in different regions, but at the end of the day, there's just traditional knowledge in cultures. And then there's this kind of newer knowledge based on science. So people really look into, again, what is truly, let's say, sugar doing to your pathways or certain environmental stress or pollution? So I think it's kind of interesting to see that kind of taking a more global approach. At the same time, there's a regional, to the point you made, there's a more regional specificity when it comes to certain pain points, whether it's sebum control in one region or, how do they, or back to, again, like, hair shiny in one region versus, fuller in another region. And I think you have to be, develop regionally when it comes to something like that the audience is looking towards. But I will say from a global standpoint, all this wellness, whether it's food, whether it's overall health, is really going to take a, dominance in the next years.
Yeah, that seems to be like an ongoing trend, and that seems to be like to stay. Just like the skin barrier, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I feel like some trends are like how we differentiate between micro trends versus macro trends, right? And I've often noticed that what needs to be addressed or can be a pain point for one region can actually be something that's another region wants.
Yes.
Right. Like some regions would like that dewy skin, want to be, want to feel that sheen, while as some regions prefer the matte look. Like it's very dependent. And I think attacking or rather approaching the pain point versus just fleeting trends, I think that's where formulation can really drive innovation.
Well said.
That's great. Can you walk us through the real product development process from your brief to your launch for a multifaceted global product?
Okay, so it all starts with that well-developed brief, a lot of communication up front, ensuring everyone's at the table. It's not just an isolated conversation between marketing and formulation. You need to include procurement early on, and regulatory toxicology. And in this matrix, you have different checkpoints for your stakeholders, the formulation direction, testing that's done, the scale-ups, as you mentioned, and ultimately it is that consumer vote to endorse the product. So as long as you have really robust, transparent conversations up front with all the key stakeholders, then things should run smoothly. And to Peter's point, these global initiatives tend to start with the lead market. You can't just launch all at once. And you're able to learn from the launches, and those learnings can be applied then to the later markets that come on board.
Yeah, I love the way Diane said that, and I do think right. We're all scientists around this table, but I will say I see the business and marketing side to today's scientists, and I was I made the decision a lifetime ago, it seemed, but I did my my marketing MBA also in NYU and Stern, and that experience completely changed the trajectory of how you understand and also participate, like Diana said, into that concept and brief type of work stream. I think there has to be on that level. I think you need to have that unity and end-to-end technical team. And then I think there's a component that's the most important to have almost have a setting to dream. So almost like taking all the rules out of place and all the, constraints that you have. And really like if we were in a room and we would have a dream scenario to solve a problem, I think to me that's the exciting part. And I do see a lot of our scientists right now kind of understand that marketing and the business side, to a greater level. I really think that's going to propel companies to design better, more profitable, more efficacious for our consumer. But really, having that dream moment, I think is really important.
That's non-negotiable, for sure. That leads to my next question, actually, in terms of skills, right? So what skills do you think are non-negotiable, someone entering the formulation role in a global industry market?
I mean, I think, I think there's so many soft skills and other skills that could take its place, but it has to be grounded in science. And I think, science, both from an academic level, but I think like we all said is science that you have to learn by doing.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, I think it's almost irreplaceable, that experience and experience across disciplines, I think is also important. Making an eye product or an eye cream, every day is not going to give you a better eye product in the future. It's really learning a ton of disciplines across categories. So I think grounded in science, but then, I think to me, being very technologically advanced, because I'm learning today's systems of, digitization and interpreting data, I think is going to be very key for the future science. And then, you're going to have that imagination.
Right.
And I think that's something that's not tangible. You can't like quantify and grade somebody on that. But, what I look for and a lot of leaders look for is, who is going to have that imagination or artistic approach to it. But again, with table stakes, hard science has a background.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I'll talk a little bit about the soft skills then.
Yeah.
Working for a global company, communication is so critical. You'll probably never have a chance to meet these partners in person. So it's important to build that relationship. I learned to say thank you in so many languages. And, just listen to them, ensure there's a collaboration in place. And you also need to hone your skills to convince and persuade, explain why something can't be done. You can't make stability go any faster. That's an easy one to explain, but there are some other nuances where you need to help get everyone on board. There's a reason why we can't take this path in product development.
Yeah.
I want to add to that. I think the willingness to learn and fail every day. Because as scientists, I think it is very important to understand that you're not going to have a great product every single day on the bench. So really understanding and willingness to like work on that and not have, fail or give up very early on. I think that's, to your point, and that's another soft skill that, especially for any market, just to be a scientist, I think it just comes with that.
Yeah, always retain that curiosity.
Exactly. Perfect. What's one mistake do you guys think that consistently somebody makes early on as a formulator?
One thing that everyone has to deal with early on, I wouldn't say it's a mistake, but it's just something to accept. Not every product is going to reach the market. The formulator may have met all of the objectives, even exceeded, and met the cost target. It's on time. But in these global organizations, there are constraints for size of line. There are then constraints as well for where marketing and advertising dollars go. So there may be some recycling involved. A project may be paused. So it's just being willing to accept that learning experience and let go. And sometimes we treat our formulations as babies, and like, why are you rejecting my baby? You're killing my baby. But you've learned so much in that project and that formulation experience.
Yeah.
Amazing.
I think to add to that, I think, has and I see it in different settings, but asking a broader audience for feedback is going to be so essential. And I think, I wouldn't say mistakes, but sometimes, performance or a product can't be solved in a small team or by yourself.
Right.
And I think, as people get more experience, they're going to build their network.
Right.
And their network within their companies, within, industry experts or suppliers. And I think, having that network is essential. And sometimes I do see that an issue when it comes to scalability, stability, performance, a clinical result. You're trying to solve it in a very small setting. But I do think kind of like opening up that network to gain that knowledge will build skills that are going to be irreplaceable in the future.
That's a very good point. And Peter, I'll let you take this one first because you kind of touched upon this. Like, how important do you think is to understand areas beyond the lab, like marketing, claims, and supply chain for that matter?
Yeah, I think it's essential. And I also see, today's scientists and professionals, they have exposure to so many more, job streams and areas. I think it's also, there's a need for them to do it and a willingness for them. But I think, to your point of how do you design the best product, if you think of that end-to-end execution, is going to be essential. And, I always encourage, these stretch roles and again, how do you gain experience? You could always be grounded in science and, have that passion for science. But I think, having the experience across value chain, supply chain, marketing, even when it comes to scientific communication, I think is going to be super valuable to the future, developers in this industry.
Makes sense.
Yes, you need a broad base of skills, not just technical, because that's how you're going to enable the success. If you have an understanding with marketing, you're able to walk in the shoes of procurement, how they've had service issue challenges. You're able to remove those pain points, and it also exposes you to those growth opportunities. They're not always vertical. They can be then horizontal, moving into another area.
Yeah, and I just to build on the point, and I love the point you made on communication, because at the end of the day, you have to communicate and drive all these different groups to one vision.
Absolutely.
And I think there's no better way to do it than to actually live in their shoes, like you just said, because at the end of the day, it's going to help you bring everybody together for that vision.
Yeah.
So it's the number one thing I think younger scientists should do, and have those lateral experiences or further education to kind of build that mindset.
That also builds empathy, right? Because you in your mind feel like your vertical is the most hardworking or does the most work or is the most important for that matter. But then when you reach to a point where you've also done marketing, you know that you can make the best product, but if you can't market it or you can't talk through it, there's not education around it, it's not going to bring a sale out there. Or for R&D, like if you don't really put in that work for R&D, you cannot sell if you're not made anything. So I think that empathy across the board is also built when there's lateral opportunities like that to kind of build on. That's great. Okay, promise is the second last question. What's one piece of advice you would give your younger self if you start out again?
Okay, well, something that I would give my younger self, and I now have an opportunity to share this with my students, is when you start building your long-term career plan, just sketch it out in broad strokes. Don't make it well defined because so many factors are out of your control. Your employer may go through a merger acquisition. There may be economic challenges, global crises, and even perhaps personal health issues for yourself or a family member.
Absolutely.
So you just keep an open mind, keep your eyes open. Then some of these opportunities that you never thought would happen will enrich your life even better. For example, I had an opportunity with Unilever to do an international assignment in Argentina, and that was amazing. And again, it was never on my roadmap.
Yeah, so I love it's great timing because I think just this week we had our Bring Your Children to Work Day and I had Valentino, my youngest, and I almost said the same thing to a lot of them as we kicked off that amazing day is I would have told myself like your future position is not really defined. And I think, and just like today's younger scientists, like their role in 5, 10, 20 years, it might not completely be defined and on paper. And I think, you in the beginning, I think I was under this mindset of, there's this role and this role here. But really, I see a convergence of roles back to the point of you need that different skill set to really, drive the communication and the vision better. So I would definitely have told myself, what you're going to do in 10, 20, 30 years is not defined at this point. And again, you almost have to make your new position.
Right.
And then the second thing, I think you have to take every day as a first day. So I think having that enthusiasm every day, and almost, seeing it as your first week on the job, your first day in the job, I think will keep that, excitement throughout your career. And I think, knowing those things back then would kind of make me a little more, comfortable in the beginning.
Fair.
Yeah.
I think early on it's good to be a sponge. Just absorb information, opportunity from wherever it comes. And to your point, Diane, being open.
Yeah.
It's so key because you can map out how much ever you like your career to, but I think there are going to be opportunities that knock that you may not think that they would otherwise.
If you have tunnel vision.
Exactly. I think you may not have seen that in your peripheral as well, that this could also be a great opportunity. But I think taking that on, challenging yourself for something new and just keeping that drive, that's amazing. I love that. And finally, Peter, you can go first for this one. What's your biggest achievement?
Yeah, there's so many, good professional achievements. And again, seeing, this entrepreneurial indie type of spirit kind of, progress into these incredible brands and success. But I think, the ability to build great leaders and scientists of the future is kind of where my mind always goes. And again, you make incredible relationships in this industry. And how do you, again, enable the next generation, have that network, but also teach that network to be the future leaders and in our company, be the best innovators, delivering the best products to our consumer. I think to me, those are, the achievements that I would love to, kind of build upon and have tried to build throughout my career.
That's amazing. What about you, Dan?
Well, I completely agree with Peter on that point. I loved working with my teams, being able to help them grow, help them move on to other challenges. And again, this is such a small community, so relationship-based. It was wonderful at the amazing sustainability event on Thursday, chaired by Hang Ma, to reconnect with some of my team members and, hear their success stories, how they're doing well. That's rewarding. Another piece, and this is more personal, is I'm proud that I was able to achieve such longevity with two companies, more than 12 years with Unilever, and then almost 20 with Avon. I was part of moving the business overseas and making sure it lands in a good place. Again, that kind of longevity allowed me to grow and evolve with the company. I hope I gave back as much as I received from the company, and that long tenure allowed me to see these these projects come to fruition
Right.
and delight the consumer. And, I still check online and on the shelves. Some of those formulas that I developed 10, 15, 20 years
Right.
are still there.
Well said.
Yeah. And then I personally also want to thank you guys because your achievement is also about giving back. You guys give back in whatever way possible. And it's so well appreciated because I feel like we don't have as many mentors in industries. So having you guys is really crucial. So thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we sincerely thank you for it.
Absolutely. So the last thing that we do usually is for the guests, we ask them to write their experience on the post-its, right? On the right side, Peter. And whatever you had an experience here, you could choose a color that you like and put it in the pineapple thingy right there.
Oh,
and then
that's
we
so
can
cute.
read
Not this.
that. Is
There's
it?
a pen in there.
Yes. I was
Yes.
like, where is the pen? I gotta get
There
it.
we go.
Yay! Okay.
We will,
So you could
absolutely.
write whatever you think and then put it in there.
You got it. We would love to.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Go first.
Our pleasure.
Thank you for listening to The Science Shaping Beauty. If you like what you heard, be sure to download wherever you access your podcasts. We thank you for listening, and until next time, keep shaping beauty with science.